Welcome back to another edition of Political Breakfast, heard right here on WABE. We are so glad that you are here. Loyal listeners, we appreciate you so much. So here we are starting another week. It is the last week of early voting. We have a whole lot to talk about. Everybody's here. Strategist Brian Robinson and Tharon Johnson, as well as our producer Lily Oppenheimer. So happy Monday. Hello to all of you as we tape on this crisp morning. It's still not feeling like May out there.
Thank God. 60 degrees when you wake up, that is God smiling on you, is what that is.
So yeah. No excitement for the 90-plus degree temperatures that are sure to come, right?
Enjoy this. Yeah. This really is. It's great because we're kind of past the pollen season, which is miserable and keeps us all kind of sick and sniffly. So we kind of get the weather without the pollen. So this is a great time of year.
Yeah, so enjoy the moment. Enjoy the moment. We're coming off a pretty sad weekend. Bobby Cox, we lost him over the weekend, didn't we?
I mean, talk about a trio of folks that we've lost. I'm sorry. Let me start over there. Talk about a back-to-back loss between Bobby Cox and Ted Turner. This is right. Just so devastating for people who have who grew up watching TBS and the Braves, and then were there through the dark years, only to see Bobby Cox bring us back and really start the golden age of Braves baseball for people who love Atlanta and love that team. So I'm just so thankful to him for what he gave our city and really our region, because the Braves are the team of the Southeast. And he's a beloved figure here. And of course, right on the heels of Ted Turner, who helped make all of that possible as well. So we have lost two Titans, and Godspeed and rest in peace to them both.
Yeah, Ted Turner made a point to get to those Braves games all the time. I read an interesting statistic. Bobby Cox was ejected from 160 games. Passion. I couldn't believe it was that many. Yeah, 160.
I mean, what an amazing display of just quiet power when it comes to a man who had all those ejections. But what was really interesting for me, Lisa, is that you heard from the players, and they called him a player's manager, right? And you had all the Braves players come back and say really nice things about him. And I agree with B-Rob. Ted Turner, an icon in our city, in our nation, in our country. All the stuff he did around with the environment, being true to Atlanta with CNN, remaining downtown. And so my condolences go out to both the Cox and Turner family.
Can I say something? My favorite tweet over the weekend, in the midst of all of the sewage out there on the elections, was this gem. There should be a eulogy or a wake for Bobby Cox and Ted Turner at 7:05 on TBS.
Oh, wow.
Right?
Wow.
And if you grew up in Atlanta, if you grew up in the South, you know exactly what it means.
Wow. Well, may they both rest in peace for sure. Two Atlanta icons that we lost in recent days. Okay, guys, let's move on to politics now. We've heard a ton about the governor's race. We have been talking about the governor's race a lot. But what about the race for Democrat Jon Ossoff's U.S. Senate seat? I don't think we've forgotten that Georgia Governor Brian Kemp has endorsed former football coach Derek Dooley for U.S. Senate. He has been stumping for him all over the state. But I guess my question today is his political power doing the job? Is it enough strength at this point for Dooley? And so I just want to know what your thoughts are on that. Brian, you first.
Well, Kemp hasn't been quiet about it. Now, he had to thread this needle where he was very supportive of Derek Dooley, provided him time, resources, guidance, opened doors for him. And Kemp's been doing all of that. And if you follow their schedule at all and follow them on social media, Brian Kemp has been with Derek Dooley campaigning in stop after stop in every region of Georgia for weeks now, working at a pace as if he is running for office himself. And that is fairly extraordinary. You simply don't see that. And part of that threading of the needle is you can't let the bigger figure, and of course in this case, the bigger figure is the governor, Brian Kemp, become the face of the campaign, because the candidate's got to be the face. And so that's a very...
I guess that's what I meant, as vocal. Yeah,
that's a delicate vocal, balance there. And so, Derek Dooley's got to be the lead on it. And I was speaking with Derek Dooley's team before we take, because I knew we were talking about this. And, one thing is, I said, look, here's one thing I'm going to say is Brian Kemp's biggest asset to Derek Dooley isn't the endorsement. It is the doors that he is opening. And I hear it, directly from the donor class that they took a meeting with Derek Dooley, or they went to a Dooley event, or they're considering Derek Dooley because they respect Brian Kemp. And it was a direct connection between Kemp and their openness to Dooley. Now, Kemp doesn't seal the deal. I haven't heard one person say, well, I'm with Dooley simply because Kemp is. But he opens up those doors for Dooley, and he has to go in there and ask for the check. He has to go in there and ask for the votes. And apparently he's been doing that. And I do feel, I don't know what the data shows, because the data shows it, pretty consistently tight between Buddy Carter and Derek Dooley for a second place spot, with Mike Collins out ahead, guaranteed the first place spot and a spot in the runoff. That you just get this feeling that Derek Dooley has a little momentum going into this final week. And I got the indication that we may see some spending, particularly from Kemp's group, in the last days of this campaign to push the undecideds toward Derek Dooley. And I do think there are a lot of undecideds because the governor's race has monopolized so much of the public attention.
Tharon, what are your thoughts? Are Democrats watching this closely, and what are they thinking about the Governor Kemp factor at this point?
So this article, to me, Lisa, actually sort of confirms what I've been saying on this podcast now for weeks. People sort of can tell every now and then that I have a sort of an affection for the Athens boy, their fellow Athenian Derek Dooley. Now, been clear, Mike Collins is leading this race. And we all know that me and Mr. Collins, we have some history. Brian has witnessed that. And we also talked about how Buddy Carter, who we met and seen out on the stump, was spending a lot of money. So this Derek Dooley surge, I just want the record to reflect for all those Dooley campaign members out there, and Brian knows what I'm talking about. They hear me every now and then show the fellow Athenians some love. And the reason I do that, Lisa, is because I've been begging Derek Dooley to do what he's doing now. That is, you are the outsider in this race. All right. The one thing that you have that they don't have is that you can own the outsider brand. And he's doing that. Now, the biggest thing that the article talks about, which you got to give a shout out to Blue. Bluestein has, a lot going on right now, but he really asked some really tough questions about the governor's legacy. And the governor has got to get Derek Dooley in this runoff. Now, if he doesn't get him in the runoff, it's not the end of the world. I mean, the Kemps will go on to do fine. But if he does, we're talking about, Lisa, the first time I've ever seen a sitting governor actually go around to multiple counties. I'm talking about B-Rob. You probably told him. I think they've probably been to at least almost 100 counties together. And if Kemp wasn't there with Dooley, Kemp always makes it a point to take him to him with different events that are even not campaign events. So I agree with B-Rob. The money definitely opened up for Derek Dooley late, and it's coming in steady. Kemp definitely is calling people, saying, hey, I need you to take Derek's call, and you got to take that call. And more importantly, this poll shows that Brian Kemp is the most popular Republican in the state of Georgia. Even Democrats don't necessarily totally disapprove of this guy because of his authenticity and what he's been able to do. Now, the challenge is, can he break through the sort of Republican stronghold of folks where you got two credible members of Congress? And I keep saying this, and we got a little time left here. Will Donald Trump enter into this race? I want to make a bold prediction right now, Lisa, and B-Rob is into Republican politics more day-to-day than I am. If this show airs on Tuesday or Thursday of this week, and we get to Friday, and Trump hasn't endorsed or hasn't come down here for Burt Jones and hasn't endorsed in this race, I think if Dooley and the Kemp machine can keep Donald Trump out of this U.S. Senate race, Dooley has a real shot to get into this runoff. Because Brian just said something here, guys. Listen very closely what he says. I do every single week. We're together 4 or 5 times a week. Sometimes actually 8 times a week. It's really true. We're together every night. And we do this once a week. And then we're together. Yeah. So we're really together about 6 to 8 times a week.
Yeah, we're doing Atlanta Rotary in about an hour.
Yeah. Listen to what he said to our listeners, right? And we got a lot of educated listeners, Lisa, on both sides. Kemp is about to free up the money, right? So if now is the time you wait for the disclosures to be done, you want everybody to not see who's about to give what to who. This is when all that money's been sitting on the sideline, waiting for the disclosure. April 30th was the date for that to pass. But Kemp has moved a lot of his money, right? And B-Rob, I know you said this, I'm going to steal it from you. He is not playing as much in the state races. Now, I think they're doing something to help the Republican ticket up and down. But if he unleashes his network and money in the federal, that could be a really, really big boost for him. And let me just tell you guys this. Buckle your chin straps. If Derek Dooley makes it to a runoff with Mike Collins, oh, my God. You think the Jackson, Burt Jones which is going to be heated. I know we're talking about that
Mm-hmm.
later. But boy, Mike Collins and Derek Dooley and Kemp gets involved, it is going to be a slugfest.
Yeah, I saw, Brian, you shaking your head. Yes, yes. What were you shaking your head yes to?
I would not be shocked at all if Derek Dooley gets into this runoff. And I won't be on the floor, just in shock if Buddy Carter gets in. I think it's close either way. But you just do feel this momentum for Derek Dooley in the final days of it. And I think Brian Kemp's brand is a part of that. And we will see, as we are taping, it is in the 10 o'clock hour on Monday. So we are 8 days away from Election Day. And we will have some indication by the middle of this week if Brian Kemp's outside groups come in to spend money on behalf of Derek Dooley. As of today, at 10:17 a.m., he is not. But there could be buys going out now. And look, because of the high number of undecideds, a last-minute ad push could make a difference and have undecideds fall their way. They may get out there with more passive voters, people who don't listen to Political Breakfast, who probably already know this and have already made their minds up because they're informed voters. But more passive voters may see for the first time, oh, well, Derek Dooley's Brian Kemp's guy. I like Brian Kemp just fine. I guess I'll go with him. I don't know these other guys either. So that could very well happen between now and next Tuesday, and that could be decisive if that's what happens. Buddy Carter has the most personal resources of any of the candidates in the race. He's worth over $100 million, maybe north of $150 million. Now, granted, that doesn't always transfer into having a lot of cash on hand. But if he had put, $10 million in, I think he could have bought this thing. I haven't seen him do that. And at this juncture, it's probably too late to try to go out and buy your spot in second. But we'll see. If Kemp comes in with big money for Dooley, maybe Carter responds. One other headwind for Carter is the Club for Growth has come in and is spending $500,000 against him, trying to beat him down into third place for whatever reason. Club for Growth doesn't like Buddy Carter. And we know that Buddy Carter is worried about Derek Dooley's rise because he has now changed his ads and spends the first 15 seconds attacking Derek Dooley. That's an effort to keep him from getting a strong hold on second. So we know Buddy Carter is seeing some red flags in his polling.
So what if Dooley doesn't get in the runoff? What does that say about the Kemp factor?
It will not be the end of the world. It would definitely be a stain on his political influence, but it will not, I think, totally derail his legacy. And it's just really, Lisa, I talked about this. I said, I don't think Derek and David Dooley got in the room with Brian Kemp and Marty Kemp. They were drinking beers, and the first lady reminded me she's more of a wine gal. And they didn't sit around and think that this guy could just run because they were all friends and they came up together and they liked to spend time together. No, they truly understood the assignment. That is that if you put this guy out here, this outsider with all these negatives, one of the things that, gotta be fair here, I want this to turn into the Derek Dooley Love Fest, but the guy had not voted in 20 years.
Right.
But he got past that. Then, he wasn't the best on policy. He gotten past that. He got through the debate, Lisa, and wasn't terrible. He held his own, right? Got past that. So now, can he turn out the Kemp machine? So if Kemp does not win this race, it's not in the world, he'll be fine. He's going to probably get mad at me for saying this because he always think I'm kind of sucking up to him every now and then when I see him out. But he understands the assignment. If he loses this race, it's not the end of his political career. He'll go down as being a very good governor for the state of Georgia. But does it derail his future aspirations to do something bigger after I think he goes and makes money? So he's got to win this because even if he decides not to run ever again, he wins, he goes out on top. But if he loses, he still can run again. But I think people will go back and say, hey, how do you want to run for higher office where you couldn't deliver your guy for a U.S. Senator?
Well, I just want to say I totally agree. And actually, last week, Tharon, I started getting phone calls from national media folks with that question that you raised, Tharon. Does this hurt Brian Kemp's presidential ambitions if he puts all the chips on the table for Derek Dooley and loses? And I said, no, absolutely not. It does not. It is not what Georgians will remember about Brian Kemp. We'll move on. Obviously he made a pick in 2020 that ended up losing in that general election. And I don't think that is what Brian Kemp's brand is either. So his record will stand on its own. It is one that Georgians like on a bipartisan basis. Actually, even though it's been very conservative, even Democrats appreciate how the state has been run. And he will have a lot to run on in 2028 should he choose to run for president.
As we tape this, bill signing is still going on.
Yeah.
I know we won't be able to come back and say this. Correct me if I'm wrong, Rob. He has until, is it May 14th?
It's 40 days from April the 2nd, right?
So I just want to say this for our listeners here, because I know we come back next week. A part of his legacy too, and a part of the Dooley rise, if Kemp messes around and vetoes or signs a bill that creates an uproar for people against him or mad at him, that's not good for Dooley. So I guarantee you, the reason why you see him waiting on some of these very controversial bills, Lisa, like HB 369, got to speak for my Democratic base, my women, my 5 women who are being attacked out here, that if he doesn't veto that one, and he maybe approves something else, that could be a part of his legacy as well. So I know we're not going to be able to tape until next week, but I want to go over
and he typically does vetoes on the last day.
Well, yes, which is, the day that this comes out will be the last day for vetoes. So, there may be news, to Tharon's point, there may be news by Thursday morning that we have to come back and do a live hit on Thursday morning because something big has happened that requires new commentary. So there's a lot at stake for Brian Kemp in the next really 48 hours.
Yeah, such is the life of politics and politicians. I want to quickly touch on this ProPublica investigation into Mike Collins regarding his trucking business. The gist of it talks about how truckers have a higher rate, or his truckers have a higher rate of unsafe driving and speeding violations. Does that really factor into what he's doing here, trying to become a U.S. Senator for Georgia?
Yeah, I think anybody who owns a business, their business record becomes part of the record and part of the public debate. And I think you have to give voters some credit for being able to sift through that. If you look at a lot of the attacks that are happening toward Rick Jackson, a lot of it has to do with his business making decisions about donations and other operations of the business. Many of those attacks were levied against Donald Trump in 2015 and 2016 when he was first coming into the public sphere as a politician. People, they went after him about donations to Democrats because his business did business in states that were run by Democrats. There were issues about construction crews that had illegal workers. So you see a lot of that issues being levied, those attacks being levied against Rick Jackson as well. And I think part of it is voters are like, look, these are business things. People who have a lot of holdings, like this is just normal rich people stuff, right? We saw that happen with Donald Trump. This is just normal rich people stuff. This is what they do. And that could very much be part of what happens here with Mike Collins. People are like, well, trucking companies have accidents. That doesn't mean he's negligent. That doesn't mean that he's done something wrong. And, oh yeah, this reminds me, this is somebody who creates small business jobs in Georgia and contributes to the Georgia economy. So voters can hear it, they can process it, but they're not automatically like, hey, I'm not going to vote for this guy because their business did something that doesn't fall in line ideologically with my views as a primary voter.
Yeah, I was going to say, Tharon, is there ever a time you separate the businessman from the candidate?
Lisa, I'm going to use that line for B-Rob when one of my clients who happen to be rich, I don't know as many billionaires as B-Rob, but I know a couple, and they have issues. And I'm going to say, you know what? That's just rich people stuff. That's just rich people stuff. But it's funny, but it's true because rich people do get away with, sometimes they get away with stuff that middle class, working class, somewhat millionaires of us don't get away with because it's rich people stuff. And one of the things why you work so hard to get this money, Lisa, is because, money can buy you freedom, but it can also buy you silence. Mm-hmm. And I want to point out something about this publication. It's not so much of what it says, it's who's saying it. It's a national media outlet, right? ProPublica. I suspect that you're going to have more articles come out against Democrats and Republicans from national medias, because I'll give you guys a little scoop. There's a lot of always angst when you're in the campaign, and B-Rob is going through it right now, is that who those reporters are, those people sitting on those stories asking questions. And so that's the first thing I want to point out. It was a national article. You also notice that the campaign nor the congressional office responded. The last thing you want to do is amplify this. You want this to be a one-day story And it's going to get amplified a little bit there, but you want to go away. But the other thing that I think is so interesting is the timing. Mike Collins is in the lead. I guarantee they knew that this was coming. It is a very serious allegation. But because most voters who are voting for Mike Collins know who he is, they know he's had this trucking business. I mean, Lisa, this is the same guy who pulled up to qualifying in an 18-wheeler sort of truck. So they know who he is. And the fact that it's like foreign workers, it goes right into them trying to say that he's employing undocumented people, foreign workers, and all these crashes that are happening. I mean, this is serious stuff. But the only thing that you have to worry about with Collins is that if he gets into the general election against Jon Ossoff, will these ethics complaints, these violations, these negative stories just be too much to bear? And I think that's what Republicans are concerned about. The Democrats concerned about who we're going to elect as far as electability. I think you've got to be concerned that if Mike Collins, which looks like he is definitely going to be in a runoff, could be the nominee, is it too much for him to go up against a Jon Ossoff who has got some challenges, right? I mean, let's be honest. B-Rob is going to point him out, I'm sure, when we get closer to the general. But he's in a much better posture as far as not having the ethics violations and the negativity around him when it comes to his job as a member of the Senate and also his conduct of his businesses. I think that lies the challenge for Mike Collins.
Can his opponents take it and drive a message to primary voters in the next 8 days, which is a really, really tight timeline, and it's really hard to get an idea to sink in with voters in this tight of a tight line? Can they amplify it themselves, put money behind it, and let voters know about it in a way that makes them see Mike Collins as less acceptable or maybe not quite as shiny a star as you had thought? I don't know. We'll see. Right now, let's say Derek Dooley and Buddy Carter have an incentive to go after each other for that place in second, as opposed to going after Mike Collins. So Mike Collins may get a pass. Here's how they will respond. As Tharon pointed out, they didn't respond in the story. And a part of that is because ProPublica is one of these nonprofit news organizations, and Republicans code that as center-left, right? And I'm not going to have a debate about it. Y'all can have your own opinions, but that's how Republicans code those groups. And so what Collins would do, if pressed, is attack the source, attack the outlet. And you'll see rhetoric like this. Of course they want to tell lies about me. They know I'm the best candidate to beat Jon Ossoff, their preferred candidate. They want that liberal in the U.S. Senate, and I am the danger to them because I can take the seat back for Republicans. If you see them respond in any way, that will be what they do, I would guess.
All right, Tharon, end our chat here, giving us the Democrat side. Do Democrats feel confident that Ossoff will hold the seat?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, he's got to work for it. If you talk to the senator, I talked to him a few weeks ago. We had a very good conversation. I mean, he's focusing on serving the people of Georgia. But I think that without getting this from him, because I did not talk to him about this, but I just know that his team is thinking about turnout. At a time where we see early voting is definitely favoring Democrats. I know B-Rob is going to tell you when we come back on next week, he's going to say, look at the trend around Thursday night. We started, voting.
Yeah. As we said, we spend a lot of time together.
Yeah. But no, Lisa, he's got to work for it. He's doing rallies. His constituent services is unmatched. He'll have the money. He's going to have a lot of money thrown at him, too. Yeah. He's battle tested. He's ready. And you know what I like about Jon Ossoff is that if you really look at his videos and you talk to him and his team and you look at what they're talking about, he's not afraid to take it to the president, right? I mean, he has sharpened his attacks on the president, and he's also been laser-like focused by not allowing the Republicans to label him as not a U.S. Senator for all Georgians. He's really also focusing on his bipartisan effort. So I think he's fine. He'll be a tough race. We just got to get him a good ticket to run on. He'll be the leader of our ticket. And what better person to have at the top of the ticket than Jon Ossoff? Yeah,
getting down to the wire. Things are changing rapidly. Hey, who knows? You may be live on Thursday. We'll just see how this week plays out. Y'all are off to the Rotary, so we'll talk about that probably next week. And thanks for checking in, as always, for another edition of Political Breakfast, heard right here on WABE.